A pale root lies on a palm leaf manuscript, twisted, dust-covered, smelling faintly of a horse. In Sanskrit, it has a name, Ashwagandha, the smell of a horse. But the second meaning is the one that mattered. To consume it, the texts say, was to acquire the strength of a horse. 2,000 years ago, a man named Charaka gave this root a category, not folklore, not ritual, medicine. He called it Rasayana. In his system, that meant something specific, a substance that protects the human body against the slow damage of stress, exhaustion, and aging. He was not the first physician in India. He was a redactor, building on an older lineage, Atreya, Agnivesha. He helped preserve their medicine in writing, with ingredients, with doses, with recipes that mixed 10 herbs at a time in specific ratios for specific conditions. In 1947, a Russian pharmacologist invented a brand new word for the same idea Charaka had named. He called it adaptogen. He didn't know Charaka had named it 2,000 years earlier. Almost nobody did. And here is the question I cannot let go of. If a civilization writes its medicine down carefully, what does it lose when the world reads the patent instead of the page? Because 2,000 years after Charaka, in a courtroom in New Jersey, two American corporations spent years suing each other over who legitimately owned the right to extract this plant. US Patent 6713,092, US Patent 7318,938, US Patent 6153,198. 3 patents, 1 plant. Neither company is Indian. This is how a 5,000-year-old Indian prescription became someone else's intellectual property. We start with what Charaka wrote. The earliest mention of ashwagandha appears in a text called the Atharva Veda, around 1500 BCE, the era when Egyptian masons were still cutting stone at Karnak. The mention is brief, a hymn referencing the plant's vitality. The systematic medicine comes later. The Charaka Samhita was compiled between roughly 100 BCE and 200 CE. 8,400 verses, 8 sections. It covers fevers, surgical aftercare, digestive disorders, mental illness, pediatric care, and seasonal protocols. In section 6, the Chikitsastana, the section on therapeutics, Charaka opens with 2 chapters that no other ancient medical tradition thought to write. Chapter 1, Rasayana, the science of rejuvenation. Chapter 2, Vajikarana, the science of vitality. These weren't chapters about treating disease. They were about preventing decline, about keeping a healthy person healthy for longer. Preventive medicine, as a formal discipline, didn't appear in Western medicine until the 18th century. Charaka was working on it in 100 BCE. Inside Chapter 2, there is a recipe called Vajikarana Ghrita, not a single herb, a compound preparation. The base, cow's ghee. The liquids, milk, the juice of Vidari, and sugarcane juice. Into a decoction, 10 herbs in precise amounts. Masha, black gram, the protein-rich pulse, Mucuna pruriens. A bean we now know contains a levodopa. The same compound used to treat Parkinson's disease today. Jivaka, Rishabhaka, Riddhi, Medha. 4 medicinal plants Charaka, classified as restorative. Veera, a root with rejuvenating properties. Shatavari, for nourishment. Maduka, licorice, for soothing inflammation. And at the center of the formula, Ashwagandha. Stop and consider what is happening here. Charaka was not handing patients a single root. He was building a polyherbal formula. He chose ghee as the base because fat-soluble compounds absorb better that way. He chose milk because it carried other compounds the body could use. He chose Vidari and sugarcane juice because the sweet liquids helped active compounds dissolve and reach the bloodstream. This is pharmaceutical compounding. With absorption, science folded in. In 100 BCE, in the last 20 years, modern pharmacology has confirmed something specific. Compound formulations of plant compounds outperform single isolates. The ingredients amplify each other. Some help others get absorbed. The mixture works better than the molecule. Charaka knew this 2,000 years before the word bioavailability was invented. He didn't have a chemistry lab. He had careful, multi-generational observation, written down in verse so it could be memorized and transmitted intact for centuries. The Charaka Samhita itself is a redaction. It builds on the older Agnivesh Samhita, which built on the teachings of Atraya, a chain of clinicians refining each other's notes across generations. A parallel text appears around the same era, the Sushruta Samhita, the foundational manual of Indian surgery. It also prescribes ashwagandha for post-surgical recovery, for patients depleted by long illness, for wound healing. This is detailed clinical pharmacology, written down in verse, while Rome was still a republic. Around the same period, 4th century BCE, Greek botanists were also trying to catalogue medicinal plants. Theophrastus, the student of Aristotle, described what he called a sleep-inducing nightshade. 3 centuries later, Dioscorides described it again. Modern botanists believe the Greeks were probably looking at Withania somnifera, the same ashwagandha plant. But the Greeks confused it with at least 2 other species in the same family. They never settled the identification. They never developed compound formulas around it. They never built anything like Rasayana. The Indians had named it, classified it, compounded it, documented it, and were teaching it across generations of students. This is the part of the story that doesn't usually get told. Not just that India had ancient medicine, that India had the most carefully recorded medicine in the ancient world, and ashwagandha sat at the center of it. For most of the 20th century, Western pharmacology had no use for the Charaka Samhita. The texts were dismissed as folklore. The pharmacy was treated as superstition. Then the chemistry started coming back. What follows is one pattern repeated. Charaka named the outcome. Modern science found the mechanism. The mechanism, every time, matched the outcome he described. In the 1950s and 60s, researchers at the Central Drug Research Institute in Lucknow and labs across India and Japan began isolating the active compounds in ashwagandha root, one at a time, studying what each one did inside the body. They named the compound family with analytes. In plain language, these are large, complex molecules with a structure that lets them interact with several different parts of the human body at once. The nervous system, the immune system, the body's inflammation response. Most natural compounds act on one of those at a time, with analides act on all of them. Then the trials began. When you're stressed for weeks or months, your body produces a hormone called cortisol. Too much cortisol over too long damages your sleep, your memory, your immune system, your weight, and eventually your heart. Bringing cortisol down is basically the holy grail of stress medicine. In randomized controlled trials over the past 2 decades, standardized ashwagandha extract has reduced cortisol by 23 to 36% in 8 weeks, repeatedly, across multiple independent studies. That is a very large effect for a plant. One specific extract, KSM-66, has been studied in 48 separate randomized controlled trials. Better sleep, lower anxiety, sharper memory, higher athletic endurance, improved fertility. In men and women, increased testosterone in men. The results are consistent. The effects are real. The regulators have noticed. The European Union granted ashwagandha novel food approval in 2023, a category that requires demonstrated safety and proof of effect. Health Canada approved it as a natural health product. Australia listed it as a permitted ingredient. Modern regulators are now acknowledging what Sanskrit medicine recorded 2,000 years ago. And here is the part that should stop you. Charaka assigned ashwagandha 5 specific properties in his text. Each one was a category in his medical system. When you map his 5 categories onto the modern clinical findings, they line up. He called it Balya, a strength builder. Modern athletic performance trials confirm this. Brusya, a restorer of depleted vitality. Modern chronic fatigue studies confirm this. Vajikari, a supporter of reproductive function. Modern fertility trials confirm this. Kamarupini, a restorer of desire and sexual function. Modern clinical trials in men and women confirm this. Pustida, a nourisher of deep tissue. Modern muscle mass and recovery studies confirm this. He could not have known about cortisol. He could not have known the molecular pathway, but he had observed the outcomes those pathways produce, and he had named the plant that produced them. And one more thing. In recent neurological research, one specific compound, with anolide A, has shown something almost no other natural substance does: the ability to regrow damaged nerve cells, the little branching extensions that nerve cells use to connect to each other. With anolide A, helps them grow back, not slow the loss. Reverse it. It is now under active investigation as a candidate treatment for Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and ALS. Charaka classified ashwagandha under Medya Rasayana, substances that nourish the mind. He didn't have a microscope. He didn't have an MRI scanner. He had a careful clinical record, transmitted across generations. Modern science has now had 150 years of microscopes. The verdict, more often than not, is that he was right. Charaka named the outcomes. Modern science found the mechanisms. What happened next was the third step. The patent system recognized corporations. August 4th, 2016. United States District Court, District of New Jersey. A corporation called Natrion filed a complaint in federal court regarding a corporation called Ixoreal Biomed. This is the kind of dispute that decides who, in the global marketplace, gets paid for this plant. On the surface, the dispute is about advertising, which extract is purer, which dissolves better, which marketing claims are accurate. Underneath, it is about who has the legal right to extract this plant and sell it. Natrion makes a product called Sensoril. Ixoreal makes a product called KSM-66. Together, these two extracts dominate the global market. Sensoril, Natrion claims, is protected by U.S. Patent 6713,092 and U.S. Patent 731,8,938 and U.S. Patent 6153,198, 3 United States patents, issued by the United States Patent Office, granting one corporation the exclusive legal right to extract medicinal compounds from a plant Charaka prescribed in 100 BCE. Ixoreal filed counterclaims. The argument was striking. They argued that Natrion's patents didn't actually cover the extraction process Natrion was using, and they noted that Natrion's European patent application had been quietly withdrawn in 2012. The legal exchange continued. Filings, counterfilings, reputation-related claims, each disputing the other's business representations. For years, in American federal court. Step back for a moment. Look at what is actually being argued. Two corporations, spending years, in an American federal court, disputing who held the legitimate process for extracting a healing compound from a plant, named, classified, and prescribed, in a Sanskrit text, written before the Roman Empire reached its peak. Charaka did not patent his work. The Sushruta Samhita does not contain a license agreement. The rishis who catalogued this medicine across generations did so to give it away. That is what Rasayana meant, to renew the world, not to bill it. But here is something most people do not know. India did challenge the application at the European Patent Office, and won. In 2001, American and Japanese firms had filed a patent application in Europe. They sought exclusive rights to use ashwagandha for the treatment of anxiety, depression, insomnia, gastric ulcers, and convulsions. 5 separate medical conditions, all described in Indian texts going back centuries. In July 2009, India challenged it. There is an organization in Delhi called the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, built specifically to defend Indian traditional medicine from unauthorized patent claims. They submitted documentary evidence to the European Patent Office, references to ashwagandha for anxiety, insomnia, ulcers, and convulsions, pulled from Ayurvedic texts, Unani texts, Siddha texts. Some of the documents dated to the 12th century, 800 years before the application, claim to have invented the use. The European Patent Office accepted the evidence. The application was withdrawn. Years later, Natrion's own European patent application for a separate ashwagandha extract composition would also be quietly withdrawn. In 2012, the European patent never issued, but the United States Patent Office had already granted Natrion's 3 patents years earlier. Those 3 were never challenged in the same way. A corporation can file the same kind of application on the same plant in 2 countries, see it rejected in one, see it granted in the other, and keep the patents that were granted. The traditional knowledge. Digital Library has helped reject more than 370 patent applications worldwide. It is one of the most quietly important defenses of indigenous knowledge ever built. But it cannot revoke patents granted before it existed, and it cannot reach every patent office. The case between Natrion and Ixoreal eventually ended, dismissed by the court, without resolution, without payment, without anyone establishing whose extraction was the legitimate one. The patent stayed in force. The plant stayed Indian. Nothing was settled. Patents are the loud theft. There is a quieter one. Somewhere in Madhya Pradesh, a farmer pulls the root from dry soil. He will never see the courtroom. He will never see the patent filing. He may never see the bottle sold in his plant's name. 85% of the world's ashwagandha is grown in India by small farmers. In Madhya Pradesh, in Rajasthan, in Maharashtra, a kilogram of dried ashwagandha root leaves an Indian farm for between $2 and $5. A bottle of branded ashwagandha extract sells in the United States for between $30 and $60. Same plant. Two supply chains. Most of the value captured at the second one. The plant is Indian. The labor is Indian. The 5,000-year clinical record is Indian. The early molecular research, in significant part, was Indian. The brand is not. The patent is not. The margin is not. Walk into any American supplement store. Read the labels. You will find the word adaptogen, Lazarev, 1947. You will find with analytes, modern pharmacology. You will find ancient herb, vague, atmospheric, unattributed. You will rarely see the word Ayurveda. You will almost never see the word Charaka. The man who first named this plant's properties, in language so precise that modern science is still confirming his categories 2,000 years later, is not on the bottle. The global ashwagandha market is now worth roughly $760 million. It is projected to cross $1 billion by 2030. The stress relief category alone is on track for over $3 billion in the early 2030s. A market built on a plant that Charaka prescribed in compound formula in Sanskrit verse before the words intellectual property existed in any language. A plant the rishis would have considered impossible to own. This is the quiet theft, not the patent in the courtroom, the credit that simply never appears. We started with a question. If a civilization writes its medicine down carefully, what does it lose when the world reads the patent instead of the page? Here is the answer. What India lost wasn't the medicine. The medicine still works. The molecules still bind to the same receptors. The body still responds. India lost the right to be the one who knew. And once a civilization loses that right, even its memory needs evidence. That is the difference. A patent makes a corporation the one who knew. A bottle without an attribution makes a brand the one who knew. Charaka becomes anonymous. The lineage becomes anonymous. The civilization becomes atmosphere. Ancient herb, the medicine still heals. But the people who first knew it could heal disappear from the page where their work survives. This did not happen because of one bad actor. It happened because of a system. In 1822, the British set up the Native Medical Institution in Calcutta. From the start, it taught both systems in parallel. Western medicine alongside Ayurveda, Unaani at the Calcutta Madrasa, Ayurveda at the Sanskrit College. For 13 years, the channel that carried Charaka kept teaching. Then came Macaulay's Minute on Indian education. He declared that one shelf of European books was worth the literature of India and Arabia. On the 28th of January, 1835, by government order, the Native Medical Institution was abolished. The Ayurveda classes at the Sanskrit College were discontinued. The Unani classes at the Calcutta Madrasa were discontinued. In their place, the Calcutta Medical College was established the following month. English language, Western methods only. The Madras Medical College followed in February. After that, Sanskrit medical training did not merely lose prestige. It lost institutional oxygen. The channel that carried Charaka for 2,000 years was narrowed inside a single year. When colonial drug catalogues were compiled, they did not cite Charaka. They did not cite Sushruta. They cited each other. The transmission line snapped. By the time India rebuilt institutional Ayurveda, the world had changed. Pharmaceutical power had moved west. Patent law had become global. And the system had no category for knowledge held in common across 2,000 years of verse. A patent examiner did not ask whether India had known this. He asked whether it appeared in a searchable archive, in a searchable language, in a searchable database. Sanskrit was not in the database. The verses were not in the citation chain. The lineage was not visible as prior art, so the patent was granted. Not because anyone hated India, because the system recognized only one kind of knowing, written in one set of languages, indexed in one set of archives, owned by one kind of institution. Charaka's medicine survived because it was written down. Charaka's credit did not survive because it was written down in the wrong language for the system that came to own it. After India challenged and lost some of its earliest patent disputes, turmeric in the 1990s, the early Ashwagandha attempts, the Indian government built something deliberate: the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, a digital firewall against future unauthorized patent claims. Today it documents over 400,000 traditional medical formulas. Translated into the languages every major patent office speaks, it has helped reject hundreds of patent applications attempting to lock up Indian traditional knowledge. It is not enough, but it is something. In May 2024, after 25 years of negotiation, the World Intellectual Property Organization adopted the GRATK Treaty, a binding international agreement requiring patent applicants to disclose where their traditional knowledge actually came from. Too late for ashwagandha's existing patents. May help with the next plant. But the deepest protection is not legal. It is the one thing the rishis would have understood instinctively. To name something correctly is to keep it alive. The next time you see ashwagandha on a shelf, look at the label. See whose name is on it. See whose name is missing. The West did not invent this stress cure. The West patented it. India already knew what it was. It was Rasayana. A patent office that does not read Sanskrit. A pharmacy that does not name its source. This is how a 5,000-year prescription becomes someone else's invention. If this story matters to you, share it with someone who would otherwise read the bottle and not the page. That is how a name returns.